So, let me announce that this week is Mental Health Awareness Week, and it's time for raising awareness about the impact and helplines available to those suffering from mental illness around the nation. I know you all know that we are flying our own flag of Baltimore half-mast for the victims of Las Vegas, and we hope that incidences like this don't occur or are reduced in our nation. And it speaks again to gun violence in this country and how we need to be taking a real close look at gun violence in this nation. We know that there are some proposals by Congress. I understand that there is a protest in Annapolis today around gun violence, and hoping that this General Assembly will look closely at our gun laws. So, having said that, 1 in 4 people in this world are really affected by mental or neurological disorders at some point in their lives. In Baltimore, we're striving to be a part of the solution to eliminate the shame and stigma associated with mental health challenges. These efforts start by examining mental illness through many lenses and also as a means to address challenges such as homelessness, trauma, violence reduction, and post-traumatic stress, which significantly impacts our veteran population. I also want to thank the police department, because one of the things that they've started doing is having mental health workers ride along with them. And I think my prayer is that it'll make a difference on the streets of our city. Through diverse initiatives, my Department of Health and Health and Human Services work closely with behavioral health experts and service providers to make resources and counseling accessible to all residents. Today I'm joined by 2 special guests who are leading the charge to help us reach those suffering from mental illness in our region. And so I'm going to ask Jan Desper-Peters to say a few words, Executive Director of the Black Mental Health Alliance for Education and Consultation. Dan Martin White, Senior Director of Public Policy, Mental Health Association of Maryland. I think it was you, Jane, that asked last week when we introduced the social workers that are working now in our libraries about their responsibilities, and are we looking at other particular areas where our colleges and universities could be helpful, and I think that this is one of those areas as well. Okay, so Jan and then Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good morning. For over 30 years, the Black Mental Health Alliance, an advocacy and membership organization, has led and managed the affairs and programs as it relates to providing thousands of individuals and behavioral health professionals a trusted forum to lead and promote a holistic, culturally relevant approach to the development and maintenance of whole health, mental health programs and services for African Americans and vulnerable communities, and has provided a platform to continue the dialogue regarding the importance of culturally competent behavioral health counseling, direct service delivery, training, education, and consultation. According to the National Institute of Mental Health, African Americans and other diverse communities are underserved by the nation's mental health system. For example, 1 of 3 African Americans who need mental health care receives it. Despite recent efforts to improve mental health services for African Americans and other culturally diverse groups, barriers still remain in access to and quality of care. Culturally competent care is crucial to improving utilization of services and effectiveness of treatment for these communities. I'm sure that we all can agree that African Americans are resilient people who have withstood enslavement and discrimination to lead productive lives. Throughout U.S. history, the African American community has faced inequities in assessing education, employment, and health care. During the fiscal year 2016, BMHA conceived and implemented Baltimore Rising, Summoning the Village Call to Action series immediately following the 2015 Baltimore uprisings and the death of Freddie Gray. This seminal work toward healing acknowledges the historical trauma and stress that Black people experience daily and explores how it affects their feelings, thinking, and actions with the goal of crafting a solutions-focused model of prevention, treatment, sustainability, and replication. This publication of the Black Mental Health Alliance was developed with the help of knowledgeable staff, trusted colleagues, and partner organizations. Many times we are out in the community and people ask, what can I do? So here are a few suggestions. Provide financial support to the BMHA or another nonprofit organization that is promoting, advocating for, and celebrating the valuing of Black children and families. Identify and join one community-based organization whose work or mission is in line and interesting to you and has a compelling mission toward, again, Black children and families. Vote in every election for those candidates that support policies and programs that support the psychological health and socioeconomic well-being of Black children and families. In closing, I'm asking that we reflect on the words of our founder and the first Black Health Commissioner for Baltimore City, Dr. Maxie T. Collier. I have concluded that hope, daring, and determination are urgently required to change the course of present history for my people. I shudder to think of the world our children and grandchildren will live in if we do not take corrective steps now. Thank you for the opportunity, Mayor Pugh, and I'd also like to just acknowledge the presence of my board president, Dr. Jonathan Shepard, and another board member, Mr. Joseph Daniels.
Dan?
Yeah. And thank you, Mayor Pugh, for bringing attention to this issue. My name is Dan Martin. I'm with the Mental Health Association of Maryland. MHAMD has been around for over 100 years working to increase access to community services for the 1 in 4 individuals living with mental health and substance use disorders, and to provide resources and information for those individuals and their family members and the public at large to raise awareness about these issues and to break the stigma around the issues. Tomorrow is National Depression Screening Day. Mental health is a part of overall health, and brief screenings are the best way that we can use to identify whether you or somebody that you care about could benefit from talking with a mental health professional. We at the Mental Health Association of Maryland have a free and anonymous depression screening tool right on our website at mhamd.org. Go in there, answer a few brief questions, and then you'll get follow-up resources, next steps, and things that you may need to address your issues. Additionally, we're fortunate here in Maryland to have a statewide crisis hotline that you can call or people in need can call to get resources and guidance for issues that they may have. That number is 1-800-422-0009. Again, it's 800-422-0009. So I urge you, if anybody thinks that they may have a mental health or behavioral health issue, or know somebody that does, to take advantage of these resources. And again, thank you very much. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you raising awareness about the issue. So thank you.
Yeah, Dan, I'm looking at Dan because watched Dan, I could say grow up, but he certainly has grown up. I remember first meeting you in Annapolis, always has been a great student. I helped him to get through law school with one of those senatorial scholarships.
Well, thank you very much.
But to watch him work in this public arena has just been a joy.
I appreciate it.
Been a great advocate for the mentally ill and always on top of public policy, and so we thank you. Any questions for any of the individuals? I'm going to hand out these two proclamations for Mental Health Awareness Day and Black Mental Health Alliance, a certificate of recognition for the work that you all continue to do.
Thank you.
And we appreciate. And to the Mental Health Association of Maryland.
Thank you.
And I don't know who gets this one, Mental Health Awareness. We'll make sure that we make copies for both of you all. Okay, thank you. Why don't we do that? Right. Any questions for them?
Just since I didn't raise it at the beginning, and I'll ask Dan and some of the other speakers about this. In the wake of Las Vegas, there was some concern about a mental health component to solving this problem, to restricting access to the mentally ill through guns and more mental health screening. I was wondering if you could just offer some perspective on that.
Well, I think it's really hard, to even put a perspective on that at this early stage, because we've not really come to any conclusion as to what the mental state of this particular individual was. I think that we're now, as I understand, interviewing the girlfriend of this individual. My recollection is that there is nothing, no history of any criminal background or anything like that. But I do believe that as we continue to move forward and look at the gun issue and how people register for guns, I don't know if we're going to start requiring people to have medical data before they pick up a gun. But that's not within my purview at this moment. But I think it's hard to pass judgment as to what the condition of this individual was or
Is that
why.
something you would favor, is to
What?
have medical certification for people in order to legally purchase a firearm?
Let me just say, Jane, I think there are discussions that need to be had around how we go about accessing guns, how many guns you should be able to have. I think this individual had an exorbitant amount of not just guns, but bullets and all of these kinds of things. We live in a world where there are countries where guns aren't even used at all. And so, and we certainly are the high crime rate nation of the world. And it begs more discussion around what we are doing around access to guns and bullets, and what is the process for receiving them, and what is actually in a background check. And so maybe that's where we need to begin, is what are we asking or what are we looking at in background checks? Any questions for these individuals?
Okay. Janet, can we just get your last name, please?
Yes. It's
Always count on that.
Jan, Jan, Desper, D-E-S-P-E-R, Peters, P-E-T-E-R-S. Mayor, if you just allow me 15 seconds. So Dr. Shepard will also be on WEAA 88.9 FM at 3 o'clock p.m. And he has been asked to actually speak on this topic as it relates to trauma and the shootings that we experience and the kinds of media that we're exposed to on a daily basis.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so I've got some other folks who. Mm-hmm. Got to change the staging. In and out.
We should do this in Edinburgh.
Right. So I can just move from.
You can go dark, you can knock before.
So I guess you all are wondering why I'm wearing pink. Nobody? Okay.
I'm colorblind.
You're colorblind. I'm sorry to hear that. Well, let me get really serious. Every 2 minutes, one case of breast cancer is diagnosed in a woman in the United States. 1 in 8 women in the United States will be diagnosed with breast cancer in her lifetime. Breast cancer is the most common cancer among women in the United States, accounting for 30% of newly diagnosed cancers in our country, which is why I've signed on to be an honorary ambassador of the Susan G. Komen Race for Our Cure, to raise awareness and support for cancer treatment and research. We all know somebody who has been affected by cancer, too many, but together we can beat cancer and lift up those survivors and champions who are fighting for their lives. I'm excited again to announce this year that on October 15th, y'all can do the drum roll, 2017, the Race for the Cure will move back to Baltimore, to McHenry Row, a new development of retail shops and apartments and homes. Komen, Maryland expects to bring about 8,000 participants to the Baltimore Race and has a fundraising goal of $850,000. Online registration for the race is at raceforthecure.org/Baltimore exclamation point. I'm really excited to welcome the Susan G. Komen Race team to Baltimore City Hall and the race back to its roots in Baltimore. We have a few special guests to share more about the race and ways they are supporting breast cancer research in Baltimore, including survivor Yolanda Dockery. I'm excited that Rachel Duncan is here, our president, and Yolanda Dockery, who I just mentioned, and Kim, the director of communications, and Kate Poole, signature events manager, and Mary Miles Nevins, associates. I want to thank all of them for being here. So if you've not pledged to anybody, you can pledge to me, because I will be participating. And so I'm really excited. So who shall speak first? Thank you. Slide in.
Thank you.
Do I notice the pen?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm Rachel Duncan, the board president for Komen, Maryland, and we are beyond excited to be bringing the race back to Baltimore after 10 years. We've got the beautiful scenery that we're going to have at McHenry Row. People are going to be able to actually race or walk around McHenry Row and see around the seawall. It's going to be really exciting. We're hoping for up to 8,500 people to show up and to raise $850,000. The money raised by Komen, Maryland, pretty much all stays in Maryland. The money that we give to headquarters for research, most of it, if not more, comes back to us. Just this last month, we announced that $1.6 million is going to Hopkins for research. That's exciting, and that is part of what makes this race so exciting. And we can, we're making strides and addressing deficiencies in care for different groups like African American women and Latino women, and it's very exciting for that. And by doing races like this, we turn awareness into action, and we can make a difference. And it takes, events like this to do that and to raise money and to make a difference. So it's very exciting, and we love that Baltimore is so excited to do the race with us, and we hope to, keep it going from here.
Great.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name's Yolanda Dockery, and as the mayor said, I am a 13-year breast cancer survivor. I'd like to first thank you for extending an invitation to me to participate in your press conference today. I was diagnosed October the 13th, 2005, exactly 117 days after getting married. I often joke with my husband and say that we got to the for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, at warp speed. I don't recommend it. As you can imagine, receiving a cancer diagnosis is a life-changing moment that survivors never forget. It's the moment that many of our lives are forever changed. My initial treatment consisted of surgery, chemotherapy, radiation, and then tamoxifen. I have participated in Race for the Cure since 2006. As a matter of fact, my initial Race for the Cure experience was in Baltimore. The race was over near M&T Stadium, and I believe after that point we moved to Hunt Valley. The race in itself is a very moving event, particularly the Survivor Parade. It's at that point that I realized, with my family, with other survivors, with Komen, I could and I would make it. I continue to participate in Race for the Cure annually because I believe in their vision and their mission. We need a world without breast cancer. We need to save lives by meeting the most critical needs of our communities and investing in breakthrough research to prevent and cure breast cancer. The support that Komen provides to survivors is invaluable. The educational components are essential. Although each journey is vastly different, oftentimes just having an idea of what to expect is really helpful. Breast cancer is the most common form of cancer among African American women. The second leading cause of death. It's only the only thing that precedes breast cancer is lung cancer. So again, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity. I'd like to give a shout out to my team, Team DHS.
So not fair.
I'm sure that
Team Pugh.
I'm sure that this is going to be an extraordinary event, as it often is. I guess I'll see you on race day
Yes,
at the
we will.
starting
Yes, we
starting line, because I understand you're a runner and I'm not. So that,
Getting that team together.
that'll
that's
probably
what
be my first and last time seeing you. But again, I'm honored to participate with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Honor. Thank you all. Any questions for the team?
When was it last in Baltimore before this year?
Was it 10 years ago? Where did
Yeah,
it
2006 was the last year. 2007, we moved to Hunt Valley. So we were in Hunt Valley for 10 years.
Great, and why did you guys decide to come back? Because of Mayor
Because
Pugh,
me.
is that why?
What else? There's no, go ahead.
Sure. We
Because
loved our
of Mayor
time.
Pugh.
Yep, Mayor Pugh was amazing. You know, we had a great run in Hunt Valley. After 10 years, you know, sometimes you kind of just got to reinvent and kind of find a new way to do, or a new location sometimes. And when we reached out to the mayor's office, it was a resounding yes. And so we got really excited about that. And this gives us a bit more of a scenic view. We get to, you know, be kind of in the heart of Fort McHenry and kind of that area. So.
And you're running
Yes.
through Fort McHenry this year, too.
We are. The race will go down. It'll go around Fort McHenry and back up Fort Avenue. Fort Avenue. So yeah, that's very exciting for us. We get to kind of bring it a little bit further south. Hopefully we'll get more people from Anne Arundel, Howard counties into the city, which is also good.
And is there an economic impact estimated with the race?
For the city?
Yes.
Yeah, there's always an economic impact with these kinds of races and this number of people. I don't know exactly what that economic impact is. I know, for example, with the marathon in my first year, we had 6,600 people. But of course, people spent the night in Baltimore. That contributed. We, at that time, had about an $8 million impact. So the restaurants certainly are happy. The retail shops, when they finish, will be very happy. And we will be very happy as a city to have all these individuals in Baltimore. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Chief, didn't want to say anything? Okay, all right.
Madam Mayor, you were in the state senate back in 2013 when the gun legislation passed under Governor O'Malley. Why didn't that legislation have an impact on gun violence in Baltimore?
In 2013, what's this, 2017? I think it probably had some impact. I don't think the laws were strong enough. I mean, everything, you know, oftentimes, as you well know, as a legislator, things get compromised, and everything that I'm sure he was requesting was not in that particular piece of legislation. I mean, I remember, what I do remember about those hearings were how long they were in the Judiciary Committee, because you have to remember there are, you know, Maryland is not just Baltimore City. You know, you have folks who come up from the Eastern Shore who came up in droves. I think I remember those hearings going past midnight because
The House hearing went to like 4 a.m.
Yeah, 4 a.m. in the morning. People concerned about the right to carry, thinking that you're invading their First Amendment rights and all those other rights. And so you have a very strong lobbying effort against whatever kind of gun laws you want to change. So it's difficult. I mean, it's difficult, as you well know, in the Congress of the United States, and it's difficult in the General Assembly of Maryland.
When that law passed, it was considered one of the toughest in the nation, and still is.
Really?
What changes would you like to see to prevent something like, if it can, something like what happened in Las Vegas from happening again?
Well, let's pray that nothing like that happens in Baltimore. We've not had that kind of experience, and I don't even like to utter those kinds of thoughts, because I think that we've been fortunate as a state and fortunate as a country, in fact, that things like this don't happen in many places. But at the same time, I think background checks could be strengthened. I don't know to what degree that needs to happen, but that's a matter for the Judiciary Committee and for those who lobby on behalf of all of us to make sure that we strengthen our laws. You know that we attempted to pass a stronger law in Baltimore around guns and the access to guns and the penalties for carrying them. I think if you were to look at what's happening in New York or what's happening in Washington, D.C., in terms of the penalization of those who carry guns illegally in communities, I think the laws are much stronger than they are in Baltimore. I think we've got a law in the books that I think will be helpful, but it certainly is not as strong as other laws in other cities like New York and D.C., where you've seen a tremendous drop in gun violence.
Mayor,
What we have on our streets are a lot of illegal guns. Yes.
I was just going to say, the situation in Las Vegas
With,
involves individuals
with legal guns, right?
and in multiple states.
Absolutely.
Baltimore and Prince George's County, at least 60% of the guns that are recovered in associated with crimes are from out of state.
Out of state.
How do you solve that problem?
Well, I mean,
You can have a tough law in Maryland, but the southern states don't. And it's been documented pretty well of the number of guns that come from other states. And how do you fix that?
well, let me even take it a step further. I mean, there's a reciprocity law in Congress now being considered for hunters, or for those who have the right to carry to be able to transfer that right to carry to other states. And we've sent a strong message to our delegation that we would hope that support does not exist in Congress for that kind of law to pass. I think you've heard the police commissioner talk about the number of illegal guns and where they're coming from. The problem is that there are illegal guns, and that there are certain areas of the country that are targeted and easier to pass them through. So, I mean, those are among the discussions that we're having with law enforcement, with the Department of Justice, as to how do we curb this kind of transfer of illegal guns and guns, period. But I think you pointed out as well that how do we allow people to get these many guns in so many different states across the country? And again, I hope that Congress takes that up very seriously, and we'll see what happens during the General Assembly. But it is a discussion that we're all having.
Mayor, the stadium authority said yesterday they were reviewing community yards after the shooting in Las Vegas to see what could be done to ensure safety. Is the city of Baltimore doing any types of reviews of public areas or anything after Las Vegas?
Yeah, we're having conversations now with our emergency management team, and I can tell you, well, you know, when you come into the stadiums, you have to go through detectors and all those kinds of things, and certainly we won't refrain from doing that. But yeah, we are having discussions. We're looking at some of the big events that we have to make sure that security is there. And people wonder why some events that we do are so costly, because we have to protect the citizens and the individuals who travel to our city. When we do the marathon, there's an extremely high cost as it relates to just making sure that we protect the individuals who come to just run in our city. You know what happened up in Boston, and you know our prayer is that no event like that ever happens, but we do make sure that there is police coverage throughout the routes to protect the citizens who are here in our city and the citizens from our own communities who participate in those events.
Have you had conversations with the police department in terms of response? It's now known that it took an hour and 12 minutes
Right.
to get to that door, and an hour and 4 minutes after the shooting had stopped. I think the days are going to bring a lot of questions about
Everybody's emergency teams and
They were
ability
very
to
outdone.
respond. Right.
No question.
Right.
They were outdone. Those guns are available everywhere.
Yes.
Has that conversation started at all in terms of, in 2017, when an individual can have multiple weapons of that caliber, of how a police department responds to a mass shooting like that,
Well,
or to an active shooting?
I mean, I can assure you that our police department has plans, but we are having, because of this particular situation, along with our emergency management team and the police department, we always include the fire department in those discussions as well. So we're having those discussions.
With, Madam Mayor, with the Hilton overlooking Camden Yards the way it is, with windows looking out towards Camden Yards, I mean, what kind of security enhancements can be made to prevent a possible situation where someone tries to, set up in the Hilton Hotel and
Well, let's not put that on the table. But again, we're having conversations with our emergency management team, and they're looking at all of these areas. Anything around stadiums certainly are. When we think about big events, hotels, all of those things are being examined in terms of, how are we screening folks as they come into these venues. I mean, it's very difficult when you think about access to hotels, restaurants, and all of those things, arenas, convention centers, all of those things. I mean, again, as we're talking with our emergency management team and our police department, our fire department, we're looking at all those venues.
Are people going to events like the running festival or the Komen race or the Ravens game a week from now going to notice changes in security as a result of what happened in Las
Well, I
Vegas?
can tell you already that those particular races that you just mentioned, there is a great deal of security already in place. We began that back in 2011. As you well know, the Baltimore Marathon started in 2000, and then after the Boston situation, there was a whole nother review of our process and what you can actually bring to a race and onto the race course.
Mayor, if I could ask about the job convention last week.
Yes.
How many people landed jobs out of that, if you know?
So we know that, in fact, we're asking all of our departments and companies and corporations to report out to us. I can tell you that online, 2,000 people registered before we opened the door. At least 4,000 people were there in the convention center. And here, this was my experience. I almost could not go 5 steps without someone thanking me for having propped that up at the convention center. Individuals who said they've never had any opportunity like this before. I just talked to one of my small agencies who was looking for, believe it or not, a data scientist that they found there, and said, look, this is, and I've got 2 agencies looking for data scientists, and she said, I found mine. So we know that people got hired. I listened to some of the pitches that were taking place there on the floor. I remember a gentleman from one major corporation said, if I hire you today, here's where you start, and this is where you go. So we're looking to get those numbers. I'll be able to share those with you as soon as we get them.
Mayor, the tent city organizers are awaiting your homeless plan and strategy, which I believe Anthony said you'd release next week. But many of them that were homeless there at this participating here are still in a school nearby and kind of waiting for answers. Do you have
I think we're at about 40 now. We were at 65 when we initially started out. So many of those folks have gotten permanent housing, rapid housing. Just yesterday, 2 women with children got housing. So we're working with them individually, and we're moving people to housing every single day. This was, to me, one of the greatest experiments in terms of self-governance and really respecting people's rights. And I got a message on Facebook, thank you for your commitment to making sure that we do get housing. At the same time, homelessness is a major problem in this city. We have 3,000 people in our city who are homeless. And so, when I talk about the journey home, for example, I said, we got to go beyond just doing events. We have to give put some real numbers to what the cost of homelessness is and what we're doing about it. For example, I know that in the next year or so we'll reduce homelessness by at least 10% because of working with Helping Out Mission, which is building homes for the homeless, about 300 near Fayette Street. We're working with some other groups and organizations in the private sector. So I'm looking forward to getting the report, and more importantly, to continue to work with those individuals. I got another voicemail message from a young lady that I met on Penn and North Avenue who was not in the tent city piece that was homeless. And she now got, just day before yesterday, got to go look at her apartment, 2-bedroom apartment for her and her 2 children. So we're working every single day on this particular issue.
So you haven't gotten that report yet, so...
I'll review the report and I look forward to getting it. But more importantly, I look forward to the plan that reduces homelessness in our city. When I look at what the cost of this particular venue, $35 million for 300. So if you ask me what the cost of reducing homelessness is in the city, it's $350 million. And so the question becomes, at what point, at what stages are we going to bite that off? And how do we begin to reduce it? And so I know what we're doing with Helping Up Mission is going to make a difference, but at the same time, I'm also talking to the private sector to help us as we continue to move down this road.
I know you're close with the mayor of DC, and DC has a lot of great initiatives to get homeless off the streets into homes. Have you kind of been copying any of those strategies that they've used?
So I work very closely with the U.S. Conference of Mayors. I think Portland is probably one of the best examples of how you working with homelessness. But I can tell you that this is a very mixed population. You have mental illness, you have drug addiction, you have folks who've come out of the institution that we've not paid proper attention to in terms of connecting them with services and so forth. So, you know, everybody, it's not like you can just shovel everybody to one particular place. You got to make sure that the wraparound services are available, which is what I really like about the Helping Up Mission venue that we're supporting.
How many people are still at offender use?
I think probably around 40. I mentioned that earlier.
Are you aware of the Baltimore block statement they published today?
I have no.
Saying that,
No. Next.
do you know what I'm going to say?
No, it's not worthy. It's not worthy. Next.
They're saying that there was no, that the agreement was not adhered to from the original.
Well, if you go on Facebook, I think you'll see differently. You know, check the
So
sources.
you're aware of that?
I haven't.
that statement by
I don't
law?
even. I don't read that.
Madam
I don't
Mayor,
read them. Go ahead.
Now that the independent monitor has been approved by the judge, kind of what's the next goal, the next step in terms of achieving the objectives of the consent decree?
Good morning. The 90-day period is kicked in, and we expect before the end of the year to have a plan in place with metrics and goals and specific plans to start the ball rolling. Ball's already rolling, but to really get it going.
So can you just talk about that? So you're putting in an actual schedule to lay out when all the objectives.
That's the first job of the monitoring team, yeah.
Any other questions?
When you mentioned that you guys are going to be coming up with metrics and goals, are there any specific statistics that you plan on looking at or any benchmarks?
I'm sure there will be, but that's a part of the planning process.
So I think we also have to remember, you all, that the consent decree is what they're monitoring. That there's some very specifics around what we need to do. And this team is hired not to rewrite the consent decree, but to implement the consent decree. And so there are certain things that must be accomplished, whether it is diversity in the police department, updating equipment, creating a better community engagement strategy. All of those are inside of that document that we work so diligently on. Okay, thank you.
If I may, Madam Mayor, just to say, I know you all have read the order from the judge's order, but just pay attention to really the care the judge took in laying out the basis for his decision. You know, the judge could have done this in 2 paragraphs, in 1 page, but he actually took the time to meet with the team and actually name the names and describe the role that each will play, including Shante Gott. And he recognizes, as we do, that first among equals, as I said to the Legislative Black Caucus on Saturday, is community engagement, community involvement. Without that, it's not going to work.
Yeah, and I have to add that was one of the pieces, as I told you all, I got a chance to speak to every team. And one of the things that was weakest to me on all of the teams was the community engagement piece. And so we insisted that there be a community engagement team that would adhere to what that document addressed, as well as, we have the Citizens Oversight Committee as well.
Because there's this hybrid team now, what about the budget? Is there an actual budget for this new monitoring team?
There will be, but I mean, we know what the budget is capped at. The actual allocations.
We don't know exactly how that 1.5.
They're going to work that out in consultation with us.
And that will
Thank
be out after the 90-day period that they have to come up with their plan of action.
Knowing Mr. Thompson as I do, I think it's going to be less than 90 days. They're going to get to work.
Because Drew did a story about this unknown pipe that's leaking sewage into the Jones Falls. Are you familiar at all with it?
No,
Okay, then never mind.
no.
Thank you.
Okay.
And
Thanks.
if there's a pipe leaking, we'll have DPW take a real close look at it, because we certainly don't want sewage leaking into the Jones Fall.